Hey everyone, welcome back. Everyone coming back to my channel, if you're new here, welcome. I am Marissa Price. I am a social worker, healer, business educator, and I'm so glad and thankful for my special guest today, Adalia Aborisade. Picky Girl Travels the World. If you are a fan of her podcast, you know her motto: defying convention, embracing adventure, and regretting absolutely nothing. And I think that's something a lot of us aspire to, especially with this movement for freedom that Black women are propelling, really. But I will pass it over to her to introduce herself and talk about her channel and all the amazing things that she does.
Oh, I am so horrible at this. Hello, I am Adalia Borishade, but I think the majority of people know me as Picky Girl Travels the World, because that's who I was on Instagram. In addition to being a traveler, I'm in the business of helping Black women live life on their terms, not society's. So my YouTube channel is a space where I share educational and hopefully inspirational content meant to empower women to go after the life that they deserve.
Yes, it's extremely inspirational, extremely. I know that a lot of us, listen to your podcast, watch your videos, and just realize that, our dreams are possible, right? It's really that powerful to hear your message, to hear your story and what you've been through and where you are now. So that's amazing. I did want to ask you where you're from in the same line, where you're from, where you live now, and the factors that kind of necessitated your move from the US abroad to Mexico, if you would like to share about that.
I am originally from Houston, Texas, but I consider Mexico City, where I live now, to be home. I left the US primarily because of a values misalignment. It took me a long time to figure out that that's what it was. But ultimately, the things that are really important in America, like uh, individualism, American
Mhm.
exceptionalism, um, that that didn't sit right with me. Those were not the things that I thought was important. I wanted freedom from religion. A lot of people, as a former history teacher, I
Mhm.
have to admit that I was guilty of perpetuating some of the myths about America, like, oh, it is the land of the free and we've got the separation of church and state. Well, if you really look at how things work,
Mhm.
that's not so true.
No.
I
Mhm.
wanted to live. I wanted to live in a culture that had a more collective mindset, that where people cared about each other. I
Mm.
think the thing that really hit the nail on the head for me as I watched the whole Obamacare debate. And I just sat in amazement that we are having the conversation about whether or not healthcare is a right or a privilege. And I was like, these are not my people. This is not the place for me. And
Right.
so I was like, and I know before anybody says anything, I know there is no perfect place.
Mhm.
But in order to be the fullest, most complete version of myself, I don't think I was safe to be that person in the United States. So I left.
Mm. That's powerful, and I can resonate with that. Because yeah, like you said, like the things that are debated in the U.S., even the things that we see currently, right, that are debated, should it go this way or that way? It's like, are we really having a debate about this right now? That people do deserve healthcare, that healthcare is a human right? Yes. I
You
feel like a
know,
lot of us feel that way. But we also feel like we're stuck, right? A lot. We feel like we're stuck in the U.S., especially as the descendants of people who were enslaved, right? We feel like we're trapped still. And so, do you have any tips on, like, if you do feel stuck, if you do feel like you can't move, um, what are some steps, some easy first steps that you can take to kind of remind yourself that you do have agency and autonomy and you are free to move?
one of the things that gets said a lot on the internet is that as Black Americans, African Americans, not a term I really love, but whichever one you like.
Hmm.
Um, it's to be African without like the memory of that, and to
Yeah.
be American without the privilege of it. And despite our second class status in the United States, we do have the right to that blue passport. And to
Mm.
me,
Yeah.
that is a game changer. So, as much as we might feel stuck, I think that mindset is holding on to the idea of playing the game and,
Mm.
like checking the boxes, following the rules, doing all the things they say you're supposed to do. Well, that's a system that wasn't designed for us at all. So, no wonder we feel stuck in
Right.
that system.
Yep.
And so, if you are feeling stuck, you're an American citizen. You have access to, at the moment, still a fairly powerful passport. So you can go.
Hmm.
There's not a question of can you go? You can.
Mm. That
So
part.
that's how I would reframe that thinking.
Yeah. And like a lot of us feel like we can't even, like you said, we can't even access a passport. Even though the process is laid out, like it's there for us, we know what to do, but we feel like we can't still. We feel like we don't have access to that. Because I know that I just got a passport, was I 20 or something like that? Going through that process. But before that, I'm like, I'm never going to be able to travel outside the US. That idea was so deeply ingrained, and I know that's the case for so many of us. So to see you traveling the world, and to see like the privilege that we do have, like I said, with the passport, with the blue passport, we are U.S. citizens, right? A lot of us, and even if you're not, right, there are different ways that you can still, access these things. Um, but I think that's powerful. That idea that no, you can leave an environment that's not serving you. You can leave the U.S. You can leave whatever country you're in if it's not serving you. If you're being harmed, you can. You have the ability to do that. So yeah, it's powerful.
Now, I'm curious, why
Mhm.
did you think you couldn't travel internationally?
That's a good question. It was never presented as a real option to me. And I think that has a lot to do with, like, of course, anti Blackness, but classism as well. Because I didn't grow up with seeing people being able to afford international travel. It was always taught to me that it was out of budget, right? That the trips, the vacations and stuff that we took were always in the car domestically, to the beach or something like that. So the thought of even leaving the US was new to me. And it's still new to me. Even being outside of the US right now, I'm in Mexico. Um, but sometimes I'm still like, am I really doing this? And then hearing from other people that are not from the US, like, yeah, I traveled abroad all the time from such a young age. Like, this concept is new to me, and I know it's new to a lot of us. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I didn't get my first passport until I was 26, 25, 26.
Hmm.
I mean, I was 25, 26 a long time ago. So like going someplace like Mexico or to the Caribbean, you could do that with a birth certificate. You didn't need a passport and you could leave the US.
Right.
But it was the first educational trip. I took a group of high school kids to Italy. And so I needed to get a passport. Um, I hadn't I don't know if I didn't think I could or I just hadn't figured out how that all worked. And
Yes.
so it hadn't been a necessity up until that point.
And that's a good point. Like, the information is often kept from us, right? Even the process of getting a passport, which is why I think like Exodus Summit is so important. When you have the information, you can make different decisions. You know the options that do exist. Because a lot of these processes feel like someone else is making the decisions. It's for someone else to travel internationally, even if it's always been your dream. So having that information of, this is how you get a passport, it's doable, and other people are going to support you along the way. That's powerful. Yeah. Yeah. Just reading a comment here from the Dark Knight. Did get my passport till the pandemic hit. I'm 30 now. Yeah, that's a case for a lot of us. Yep, it really is. Cheryl says I just got my first passport this year at the age of
Oh,
56.
wow.
Gotcha, gotcha.
Wow.
And congratulations. That's a big step. That's a big step when you feel like international travel is not possible for you. Just even having the passport, if you're not ready to take that trip yet, at least you have it in case you have to get out of the US, which is a different story. So, but yes. Yeah. Cheryl says I was always told that America is the land of the free. That part. Yep. Yep. And I
And
think, yeah.
I think we've internalized that message a lot more than we think. This idea, because I get this a lot, like, oh my gosh, you live in Mexico. Like, isn't it dangerous? And aren't
Yes.
you worried about this, this, and this? And despite seeing the realities of life in the United States, especially life for Black people in the United States, we still kind of hold on to that notion that this is the best place in the world. So even if it does suck for me, it's
Mm-hmm.
probably this is probably as good as I can get.
Mm, that's true. That is very true. Yep. And I think living in like the center of the American empire, right? It's like everything feels so isolating. It feels like, I think I said this other day, it feels like you're on a different planet sometimes. It feels like you're on planet United States instead of like the globe, because we have access to travel to different places to experience new things. But the messaging we receive is, why would you? This is the best place on earth. Like, you made it. You
Yep.
made it when you were born in the US. Yeah, absolutely. I did want to ask you, in line with that, how your life has changed since moving abroad. We see you traveling to all these, different places on your YouTube channel, having all of these experiences. So yeah, how has your life changed since you moved abroad?
The travel piece hasn't really changed,
Mm,
because when I lived in the US, I had a compulsion when it came to travel. I needed to be going somewhere every month at minimum. Um, so I still travel. That's not different. But really, what's different, I think, is how I live my life on a day-to-day basis. That weight that we carry as Black women,
mm-hmm. Yeah.
it's gone.
Ooh.
And I didn't realize that until it had to be. It was when because I initially moved to Mexico in 2017. And so it was a time I was having to go back stateside then. I'd only been out of the US a year or two. And all of a sudden I could feel it in my body again. I could feel my shoulders tensing up, and I could feel kind of this dread. And I was like, I don't have this when I'm here in Mexico. But I could feel having to put that back on to go to the US. So I wasn't aware that I was carrying that, but I am acutely aware of its absence now. How I live my life, I have very minimal stress. Definitely no external stress. It is, if there is some stress, it's because I'm putting it on myself, and I'm working on that.
Yeah.
And less focus on work. And even I moved abroad and I was still working a traditional job. And so even when I was still working like that, the work-life balance was something I never enjoyed when I was in the United States.
Yeah. That's so real. Yep. And I think even being in Mexico for, it was like has it been 6 months? Maybe like 3 months so far. I feel that same like, I can kind of breathe, you can kind of exhale, because we often go around day to day holding our breath in the US, just waiting for the next traumatic event to happen, just waiting for
Yeah.
someone to say something to us that's just gonna try to break our spirit. So being able to be out of that toxic environment, I feel like you have a lot more mental space to go after your dreams, right? It's amazing. It is amazing. Yeah, Sam Reed says, unless it's the global north, Americans have the perception that everywhere is poor and dangerous. Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yep. The Dark Knight says, I got mine because I was planning to escape to Tanzania, and even though this passport most definitely opened up a new way of thinking of possibilities. Yeah, yeah. And I'm rooting for you to get to Tanzania. That's amazing. Yes. Okay, so in line with the title of the video, I did want to talk about the financial benefits of moving abroad. I know I learned about the foreign earned income exemption from your channel, which is a way for us who have mountains of student debt, which I have a lot of thoughts about. It's a way for us to like have lower payments, right, when we move abroad. And I think a lot of us don't
Yes.
even know that this option exists. But student loan payments have restarted this month. And I know a lot of us are probably struggling getting those emails coming in. So if you could talk about what that is and how that can help those of us who are struggling with the student debt.
The FEIE, Foreign Earned Income Exemption, lets you, if you are outside of the US for basically 11 months, it's 330 days. You need to be outside of the US in a 12-month period. You can exempt your earned income up to $120,000. So what that means is when you file your taxes, because as a US passport holder, as a green card holder, you always have to file taxes. You never get a break from that. But when you do, you get, there's a little place, and I forget what form it is, it's like 2255 or something like that. They ask you this question: how many, like whatever software you're using, how many did you spend the entire 12 months in the US? You said no. You put how much you make. As long as you make less than $120,000, you are exempt from federal income taxes.
Mm,
Now, what your state does, that may be a different thing. Some
mm,
states accept the FEIE, some don't.
mm,
And so what that means is, one, you can get by without having to pay taxes. But two, for the folks with student loan debt, this, I don't want to say this is a way to game the system, but but this is a way to lower your student loan payments to $0.
mm-hmm.
Because if you are in an income-based repayment plan for your student loans, it's based on your income. If you are filing a tax return that is exempting all of your income for tax purposes, you made $0. Therefore, your loan payment has to be $0. And so I know several people who this is their plan for their student loans. They intend to stay outside of the US, continue to file the FEIE, have their income certified every year as being $0, and continue to make those payments on time. Depending on the kind of loan in the program, it might be 20 years, it might be 25 years, but basically you wait out the clock
Yeah.
and you make $0 payments while you're doing that.
Mm, that's amazing. I know a lot of us don't even know this. A lot of us are struggling with this debt that we signed up for when we were 18, 19, and they just gave us like, here's $100,000 in debt for you.
Signed up for makes it sound like you were of the right mind. You were,
That's true.
and I don't believe that's to be the case, because we
Yes.
we know 18-year-olds should not be making these kinds of decisions. We
Mm-hmm.
know that if an 18-year-old went into a bank and asked for $100,000 loan for anything, they would
Right.
be turned down immediately.
Yeah.
Yet this system, I have a lot of things to say about that system, but we don't want to get into that. But yes, this is one of the huge advantages of leaving the United States, particularly if you have student debt. And I know a lot of folks tend to think student debt is a reason they can't leave.
Yes,
And
that's true.
I say absolutely that is not the case.
Hmm. Yeah, because that, like you said, it motivates a lot of people. Like, this is a real, tangible way that I can address this debt that is hanging over my head. And also, if you have the dream to move abroad, it's a win-win situation. So, yes, that is powerful. It is the FEIE, Foreign Earned
Yes.
Income Exemption. Yeah.
Now, if by chance you happen to work for the US government, FEIE does not apply to you. You cannot
Oh,
exempt that money if who you are earning it from is Uncle Sam.
okay. That's helpful. I did not know that. Okay. Yes, the Dark Knight says they can email all they want. So they get left on red. Yep. Yep. Yeah. Whew. Yes, Samry. Yeah, I know. I know. I'm so thankful that I came across that on your channel. I'm like, ooh, I didn't know
Yeah.
that. I did not know that. And I did want to ask you, like, in general, about the lower cost of living when you move abroad in comparison to the US, because I know a lot of us in the US struggle with housing costs, rising housing costs, food prices. Healthcare is a whole other topic. We could have a whole live discussion on the healthcare costs in the US. But when it comes to moving abroad for a lower cost of living, what have you found in your experience traveling and talking to other people who have moved abroad?
That is one of the financial benefits, because there's, of course, there's lots of mental and psychological benefits removing yourself from the toxicity of the United States. But things tend to cost less outside of the US. Things like rent. Just recently, I was going through some old documents and I found it wasn't a budget, because I don't really believe in budgeting. It was more of like a financial snapshot. Like I plugged in my numbers and I could see my net worth and all of that. And it broke down my expenses. And I saw that I was paying $1,200 in rent for a one-bedroom study apartment in the suburbs of Houston, not like centrally located, not on a mass transit route, anything like that.
Right.
And even, well, I was going to say my rent is a little higher now with the exchange rate, but for the most part, every place I have paid rent, it has been half that
Mm.
for a two-bedroom, two-bathroom place. Um, Often food is less expensive if you are not struck on, I have to have, Fruit Loops from the US. I have to
Mm.
have Pace Picante sauce from the US. If you can deal with local alternatives, your food spending will probably be less. Now, of course, this is not, if you were to move to Switzerland, none
Mm.
of what I just said applies. But there are many, many places where what it will cost you to live abroad will be significantly cheaper. And if if by chance you can work for an overseas employer, you probably won't have to pay for housing. So
Mm.
with the jobs that I had abroad, I was brought in on a work visa, and part of my employment package included paying for my apartment. Usually transportation, or the apartment was close enough that I could walk to work. So I had my money to do other things. I wasn't having to pay rent.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, you have a wonderful video on your channel. I think it's like move abroad without if you don't have any money saved or like a big nest egg, you can get a
Yeah,
job abroad. Yeah.
there are, here's the thing, because I have heard a lot of people tell me like, oh, I wish I could, but I don't have this degree, I don't have this and this. If you want out, you can get out. I think a lot of people get caught up in, when I leave the US, I have to pick the right, most perfect country and situation. And you can have several moves until you get to that. My own case, my own situation is a example of that. I took a job in Honduras. I knew that was not a place I was going to want to live long term. However, it got me out,
Right. Yeah.
and that was the goal. And from there, I worked that job, I got the experience. From there, I then used that to be able to go somewhere else.
Mm.
So there are ways to get out.
Right. Right. And that's important because, a lot of us put this pressure on us, like you said, to be everything to be perfect. Your plan to be perfect before you even take a move, before you even take a step. It's like you might just know the next step, and that's enough. That's enough to get
And
out.
that's enough.
Yeah, to achieve that goal of get out. And then with the information you gather when you're in that place, self reflection, you'll be able to determine your next move. So you don't have to know all the steps in the path before you take the step. Yeah, that's
No.
powerful. I did link your wonderful ultimate move abroad checklist. Put that in the chat. That helped me so much as I was transitioning out of the U.S. and just going over the stuff, because sometimes it feels like a lot when it's just sitting and floating around in your brain. But having like a checklist like this is so pivotal when you are planning to move abroad. So I encourage you all to download that. I did want to pivot a little bit, I guess, about investment, because you do help new investors, specifically Black women, right? Um, learn about investing. I think you have a challenge coming up. Get started investing, which I'll
Do.
link in the chat too.
I do.
Yeah, but I
I
wanted
do.
to just talk a little bit about how do you help new investors, and then I guess the benefits of things like low cost index funds, which I know is a new concept to a lot of us. But yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, on my channel, I have a playlist of like financial tips, tricks, some videos on investing, that kind of thing. Because I know, depending on people's situation, they're like, hey, I don't have like I'm trying to make it. I'm trying to make ends meet. I don't have a lot of extra money. There is free content on the YouTube channel. I also host the Get Started Investing Challenge. The last one for this year will start on the 15th of October. And that challenge is specifically for Black women. We are the least likely to invest. We are the least invested in the stock market. You add that on top of the pay gap that
Mm,
exists for Black women, and you can see how that puts us at a huge disadvantage. And over the last few years, hearing women talk about, like, I just don't understand that. I don't know. Not understanding what those things are, how they work, and also feeling intimidated by it is what like prompted me to create this 6-day challenge. If somebody happens to be not a Black woman, later this month, I'm launching a self-paced version of that. So, if you're like, maybe you're Latina, maybe you're, Arab, I don't know, and you're like,
mm,
I need some help, I need some guidance, I got you. And so I do that. I also do some coaching, but I guess I'm sort of like what do you call it? An evangelist a little bit, because that is what made the difference for me. I would not be
mm.
sitting here in this apartment in Mexico City, casually, like working when I feel like it. Not, I wouldn't be living this life if it was not for that. I was a teacher. And so when I would try and talk to other teachers about like, what are they doing for retirement? Most of them were counting on their Texas Teacher Retirement Fund, because I did not pay into Social Security. I paid into Texas Teacher Retirement. And had that just been what I did, I would not be sitting here right now.
Mm.
And so I'm like, everybody needs to invest in something
Mm.
somehow, because, and I'm also about, you're never going to hear me talk about like side hustling and all of that, because I was tired. I did not have the energy to be out there running a business or driving Uber or doing whatever. So to me, investing is like, I don't have to do anything but put a little money aside. And then I look up and it's worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yeah, like that's the cheat code.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Now you asked about low cost index funds.
Mm-hmm.
That is literally how I did it. And so this idea that, oh, I got to know all this stuff about stocks and blah, blah, blah. No, you don't. Um,
Mm.
an index fund, I always say an index is kind of like a playlist.
Mm.
Okay. So you think about how playlists work. You put together certain music and certain genres, right? And then that playlist gets a name that tells you kind of what it is, what's being tracked in that playlist. To me, that's what an index is. So most people have been hearing the names of indexes but not realizing it, like the S&P 500, the Dow Jones Industrial, the Wilshire 2000. Those are indexes. They are a playlist of stocks, maybe
Mm-hmm.
bonds, that someone is tracking their performance. And
Right.
so an index fund is a fund that tries to copy what the index does.
Mm-hmm.
So the S&P 500, 500 largest companies in the United States, right? That's your Google, your Microsoft, Apple, uh, I guess Tesla's still in there. I don't know. It's those companies. Now you hear those names and you think, yeah, those are companies I should be invested in. But
Mm-hmm.
then if you try to buy individual shares of stock in those companies, and like, I don't know about y'all, I did not have a lot of money to invest. I was, like I'd be investing $200 per pay period. That's not realistic for me. And what an index fund lets me do is I can buy a fund, I can buy shares in this fund that are much more affordable, and it gives me a little piece of those 500 companies. Like,
Mm.
that's easy, that's
Mm-hmm.
simple.
Yep.
Um, so literally low cost index funds, that has been my investment strategy. Um, and there are now, I will want to caution people, low cost. Let's talk about what that means. Um, when you buy an index fund, whether it is a mutual fund or it is an ETF, there is an expense ratio. That is what it's going to cost you to own it.
Mm.
You never like write a check for that. It's just taken off the top. You don't notice it, but you are paying this to own this fund. A low cost fund, the average expense ratio is about 1%, which might not sound like a lot, but y'all, it is.
Mm.
That is a lot. So for something to be considered low cost, it's usually 0.5%. In my book, that's still too expensive. I would not count something as low cost if it is more than 0.2% of an expense ratio. So I'll give you an example. Fidelity has a S&P 500 index fund. Their expense ratio is 0.015. Now, if I can pay 0.015 to own this versus 1%, I'm paying these little teeny tiny percentages. Absolutely. I forget the number, but fees. can cost people over the lifespan of their investment. Fees can cost them somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million. Because we think like 1% isn't that much, but over the life of your investment, it can be a whole lot. Fidelity also has one that actually has a 0% in expense ratio. Vanguard, theirs is like 0.04. So you want that number to be as low as possible. So my rule of thumb is 0.2% or less of an expense ratio to consider something as low cost. Now, it might seem counterintuitive, but there are funds out there that will charge you 2% and think nothing of it, even though they have competitors charging practically zero. But because people don't know, they don't, or they go to, whoever the administrator is over their account and they say, hey, I want to buy S&P 500 index fund. And folks in the financial services business, it's a business. And
Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah,
there's usually not a lot of incentive for them to sell you something cheaper.
that's so true. Having come from the financial services industry, yes, it is a business.
And I'm not trying to say those folks should not be making their money,
Mm-hmm.
but I want people to be educated consumers. It's just
Mm-hmm.
like when you go to buy a car, when you go to rent an apartment, you go to buy a house, you have this list of things that to look out for, or to consider, questions to ask. I want people to be that same way when it comes to financial things.
Right, right. That's so important to ask. What is their motivation behind telling you that information? Yeah, that's true. That's very true. And I did want to talk about Fidelity because I think, it's free, right? It's free to start an individual
Actually,
brokerage. It's not?
actually, Fidelity might even give you some money.
That's right. Yeah, I
It
have that written down too. A
changes.
bonus. Yeah.
Yes, it
Mm-hmm.
changes. But for the last couple of years, they have been off. If you go to, I think it's like fidelity.com/special offers, or just Google that,
Right.
Fidelity special offers, to open a Roth IRA, a rollover, or a brokerage account, or even a money management account, um, which is kind of like a checking account. They have been giving somewhere between $50 and $150 if you
Mm,
fund it in less than 15 days.
that's amazing. So you get money to start investing.
Yes. And what could be better than
I
that?
know. I love
I
that. I
wish
love
I
that.
wish Fidelity had a referral code, but they
Yes. They
don't.
need one.
But I'm just like, get this free money.
Yeah. Yeah, that's life changing because a lot of us feel like, again, it's off access to us. Like we can't do this, it's for someone else. And me coming from finance, I shared this with you, but they taught me how to invest other people's money. They never taught me to how to invest mine. And as a first generation college student, being around other finance students who was like, you know, I do this all the time. This information was new to me. So to be able to be like, no, you can start a free account at Fidelity if you want to start investing. And I think they even offer like fractional shares, right? If you don't have
Yes,
the full
which I
amount of the
love.
share. Mm-hmm.
So that means if somebody's watching this and they're like, what's a fractional share? That
Mm-hmm.
means you want to buy that share of Google or Amazon that's $3,000 for a single share, but you only got $10. You can buy $10 worth. You can buy a fraction of a single share. To me, that is revolutionary for those of us who are not coming from a background where investing is a regular thing.
Right, right. Mm. Y'all, there are gems. Thank you, thank you. And you did mention a Roth IRA, which I do want to talk about. I interviewed Rochelle, who was in her early 20s a few weeks back, and she was talking about wanting to start investing. And I'm like, Adalia talks about Roth IRAs for people in their 20s all the time. So I did want to talk
Absolutely.
about, yeah, the benefits of Roth IRAs for young investors,
That, okay.
especially. Hmm.
It's particularly for young investors, but I think I had to be at least in my mid 30s before I opened one because I didn't know before then. But if you are a young person, you are in your 20s, or if you're watching this and there are young people in your life, they need a Roth IRA. What is it? It is a individual retirement account, specifically one in which you put in after tax money. Why is that important? Because Uncle Sam does not let anyone get away with not paying taxes, right?
Hmm.
By putting in after tax money into your Roth IRA, you choose your investments, those investments grow, they increase in value. You never have to pay income taxes on that growth. If it's $1 million, if it's $12 million, does not matter. Um, this is different than, let's say, maybe you have a 401k at your job. More likely than not, that money is coming out pre-tax. And when you take that money out, doesn't matter how little or how big it grew to, Uncle Sam is going to tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, remember, you did not pay income taxes on this. I want my income taxes now. So for young people, especially, a Roth is valuable because you have more time on your side. One of the biggest elements that makes investing work is compounding.
Hmm.
And so you can start in your 20s putting in less money and still end up with more in the end than somebody who puts in twice as much.
Hmm.
So time on, what is it they say? You don't want to time the market, it's time in the market. Like, don't
Hmm.
get caught up with, oh, is the market up or down? Should I buy today? Should I not? I'm gonna wait for a crash before I buy. What's really important is how long your money is in the market. And so the younger you can start,
Hmm.
over your lifetime, you can invest less. But because it was in there longer and had more time to compound, you're going to come out ahead. And what makes the Roth so beautiful is you don't have to pay income taxes. You can retire whenever that is as a millionaire, possibly a multimillionaire, and you don't have to pay any taxes on that. I think that is incredible. And I think every young person, like, that's something we need to get in the habit of doing for somebody when they turn 18.
Hmm.
You get your first job, we got to go open you a Roth IRA.
Hmm. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. So if you are in your 20s and you're watching this, you can open a Roth IRA. I think that, there are brokerage firms where, again, you can open a free account. So it is
Oh,
accessible, it is doable. Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely, it should be free. I I have a video on my channel about, like, money questions you should be asking, and I talk about, like, you should not be spending money to have your account somewhere
Mm.
because those people are using your money to make money.
Yes.
They need
Yes.
you, so you should not be paying for that privilege.
Mm-hmm. That part. That part. And I'm thinking, like, even with checking accounts, right? A lot of the checking accounts that we have are fee accounts. So you're paying them to use your money. Mm-mm. So if
No,
there,
no,
yeah, there are
that does
options
not sit
for,
well with me. Not at all.
there are options out there for fee-free checking, savings, investment accounts. There may be an expense ratio for investment accounts, as Adelia shared, but those are options that you can take advantage of to keep more of your money, because that's always the goal. I did want to ask you about your FIRE journey. So, for those who don't know, FIRE is Financial Independence Retire Early Journey. Um, how you did it, anything you want to share. how investing kind of led you down that path, and then any lessons you learned along the way that you think would be helpful for other people.
Um, I never thought FIRE was in the works for me. It was a question, would I be able to retire? Because the reality is, whether you're retiring in your 40s, 50s, 30s, 60s, whatever, when you retire, you have to have enough money to support the life you want. And I looked around at how much things cost in the United States, and I was just like, so let me get this right. And also, a lot of the so-called financial gurus were saying, well, like, you need to have $5 million. I was a public school teacher who never made more than 60 grand. And that was like late in my career. How in the hell I'm gonna come up with $5 million? Like, because I'm thinking about like saving. How can I live and save and have this amount? Like, the math was
Mm-hmm.
not mathing.
Mm-hmm.
So my concern was, will I be able to retire?
Right.
I moved abroad, and because of the investing I had done just to prepare for regular retirement, and you add in that things tend to cost less outside the United States, I did some math and I looked at it and it was like, oh, if I need this much less to live on per year, I don't need nearly as much money to retire on. So, for me, in my specific situation, had I not left the United States, retiring early would not have been an option. That's really what allowed me to do that. I didn't even think it was possible, and it was. Now, there are different kinds of FIRE. There is fat FIRE. These are people who in retirement are expecting their expenses to be like 100 grand a year. If you're going to be living like that, yeah, you need some millions
Right.
to retire. And I always found fat FIRE to be laughable, because I was like, I've never made 100 grand in my life. Why would I be spending that much money a year as a retired person? Um, Lean FIRE was much more like a possibility. I think to be considered lean FIRE, it's something like like around 40,000 a year. I was like, okay, that's doable. And then I got introduced to Coast FIRE or Barista FIRE. This
Mm-hmm.
idea, Coast FIRE, and that's what I consider myself to be. Um, the money that I have invested, if I don't put anything else in there, when I am ready to start pulling on it, it will be enough to support me. So between now and that time, I'm just kind of coasting along. Like, the work, I don't need to make nearly as much money to support myself,
Right.
because I live outside the United States. So that works out for me. Barista FIRE, these are people who, like all the other FIREs, they're like, I still can't come up with any of that money. Barista FIRE is, I have enough saved that if I took a little job as a barista part-time, to pay for my daily tacos or whatever, I'd be good.
Mm.
And like I said, in order to have the nest egg to do that, it was investing in low cost index funds, literally a total stock market index. Um, I increased my savings rate as much as I could. Um, 50% was the goal. Once I left the United States, I was able to save a higher percentage because I was not paying for my rent, somebody else was. Um, and of course, leaving the United States. You
Mm.
can do FIRE in the US,
Mm-hmm.
but your retirement expenses will be more. So you would need more money.
Mm. Yes. Yes. And I can only imagine, like, with healthcare costs and cost of, residential facilities potentially when you retire, that number just ballooning if you stay
The
in the
average
US.
American has no idea what a nursing home costs.
Yeah, yeah.
In 2008, my mother wasn't even in like the nicest of the nice, and it
Hmm.
was still 4 grand, 5 grand a month.
A month?
Like I
Oh
said,
my gosh.
nobody has any idea how
Yeah,
much those places cost. And
yeah,
that was not like a senior community. Those places, I can only imagine what, like for active seniors, I can only imagine what those places cost.
right, right. Ooh, ooh. So yes, if y'all have not considered moving abroad before, just based on all the benefits that Adalia has shared with us on this live, like it really is something to consider, especially when you consider aging and the cost that that naturally brings. Yeah. Um, I did want to ask you how reclaiming your financial autonomy is something you talk about a lot, especially when it comes to Black women, reclaiming control over our finances, how that has impacted other areas of your life. You have Reclaim the Retreat, co-hosted with Ivana Robinson. But yeah, how that has impacted the decision making in other areas of your life, taking control of your finances.
It has given me options.
Hmm.
That is what it has afforded me. I often tell the story about when I was working in Kuwait. I was working for a horrible, horrible company, horrible, and they were doing all kinds of shady things, illegal things. And I looked around and I was immediately plotting my escape.
Mm.
And contract be damned, and I'm looking around at all these other people, all these other women who were like, I can't do anything about this, I've got to stay here. And I thought, well, I'm not special, like what's the difference here? And the difference was i had I had enough of a financial cushion that I could walk away from that situation. And I thought, I don't want to just be the one person who can do this. Like I want this for all of these ladies that I work with. And so like that's what put me on the path to do the work that I do now. But having having mastered my finances, it has given me the freedom to try crazy things, you know, to say, oh, there's you're offering this new trip. Sure, I'll go do that. Or I'm going to go live in Oaxaca for a month and learn how to dye textiles with traditional methods, you know why how can I do that? Well, I'm not worried about how am I going to eat. I'm not
Mm.
worried about making credit card payments. And so I all of that energy is freed up to just try all these different things.
Hmm. I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And that kind of touches on like what you always say, intention and immersion. I think you said that in one of your lives recently. To change your life. If you set your
Yes.
intentions and you also immerse yourself in an experience, change
It,
naturally
it's the
occurs.
change will happen.
Yeah.
Um, Today, money coach Malika said something which takes that and puts it more, I guess, plainly. She
Mhm.
said, you have to make it up in your mind before you can make it happen in your life.
Ooh, that's good.
You've got to decide this is for me. I deserve this.
Mm,
Once you decide that, the figuring out part will come.
yeah. Yeah. Mm, that's powerful. Once you decide it in your mind. Oh,
Yeah.
watch out. Okay. Okay. I did want to talk about the immersion piece, right? With Reclaim the Retreat, which we know there are dates in 2024. I'll put the link in the chat. But for those who don't know what Reclaim the Retreat is, if you could talk just a little bit about that and like the cool places y'all are having retreats for women and femmes, I believe, in 2024.
Yes,
Hmm.
yes, yes. I partnered with Ivana Robinson to do a retreat. She is a life and leadership coach. I am a financial educator. And to us, those two things kind of go together when you're trying to figure out what is the life that you want, you know, what is the dream? Like I say that sometimes that I am living my dream. And how did I get here was I, had a conversation with myself and figured out what is it I really want. Well, like I said, you got to be intentional about it and you need to immerse yourself in that work. And so, what better way to do that than on retreat, where you're away from the day to day stress and responsibilities? You are with other women and femmes who are they're wanting to shake things up. They're wanting to dream new dreams. They're on a similar path, and then you're in cool places learning cool things. That was our vision for it. We hosted our first retreat in El Salvador, and that has kind of, I don't know what the word is, what we did in El Salvador, because El Salvador is in a place where they are reclaiming some things there as well, reclaiming some history, reclaiming some identity. And we like having those two kind of parallel things going on, where the retreat guests are working to reclaim their happiness and that sort of thing, alongside witnessing some reclaiming happening for the people in the place that we visit. And so for 2024, we are adding Hawaii, which at first glance you might think, well, Hawaii's America. People forget Hawaii is an occupied nation. Okay. And so, again, our focus, like the educational piece, because that's one thing we were very adamant be included in our retreats. We are both travelers and we like to travel in such a way that we learn about the people and the places we go, and we keep the money in the local economy. So, like, we're only booking accommodations that are locally owned by like Native Hawaiians, or employ Native Hawaiians and pay them fairly and that sort of thing. So we've added Hawaii. We're adding Oaxaca, Mexico. We have 2 retreats in 2024 in El Salvador for Galentine's Day. We have an extra special retreat where we're doing some different things, so that we can celebrate some self-love. And we got Oaxaca, and we're getting ready to announce. How do I describe it? It's reclaim, but it's like an extra special version of reclaim. So like within the next week, we are getting ready to announce that the people who are on the wait list will get first dibs. So if you're hearing me talk about this and you're like, oh, I am intrigued, I want to know, go to the website, reclaimtheretreat.com, scroll down to the bottom and get on the wait list. So we're very excited about the experiences we have lined up for 2024. But ultimately, it's the thing I like about our retreats is they're kind of the complete package. You get to like bond and make new friends, people, form community with people who are trying to shake up their lives as well. You get to learn about a new place. You get to experience authentic cultural experiences. And then you're getting to go to some of the most beautiful and culturally rich places there are.
It's amazing. And I'm looking forward to that announcement that y'all have coming up for the April retreat.
Yes.
Sounds intriguing. It sounds intriguing. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I guess in keeping with the theme of collaboration, I shared with you that I watched and listened to episodes of your podcast to try to get me through the process of exiting a toxic job. So I did want to ask you how you're able to connect with such amazing Black women all across the world, traveling, especially as an introvert, right? Because both of us are introverts. Both of us don't really like to talk to people that much. So how you went about that process, and anything you'd like to share about that?
The internet.
Yeah.
The internet. It is much more palatable for me as an introvert to slide into somebody's DMs or shoot them an
Mm.
email versus if I had to like walk up to somebody in person
Oh no.
and pitch them. Oh, absolutely not. It would not be happening.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing is the way my mind works. People often tease me about like the random things that I know. And for me, I'm always picking up information. I'm always making note about like, oh, this person I follow on IG was in Kazakhstan last week, or they're a Black expat living in Kazakhstan. Oh, okay. So at some point, I'm storing that and I'll pick it out later. Like, I think this element of their story would be interesting for the audience. So it's the internet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And just kind of always, taking things in and seeing. Like I try to curate a feed of Black women out here doing their thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what I want when I open social media. That's what I want to meet me in the morning.
Mm. I love that. I love that. And yeah, I think that's one of the strengths of being an introvert is you take in so much information all the time, that you're able to use, like I said, to find amazing podcast guests. And I always want to make it a point to say, if you want to start a YouTube channel like this, please do so. You do not have to be an extrovert, because I am definitely an introvert. Both of us are,
Oh,
right? And we're still doing it.
absolutely not.
Hmm.
That's why the podcast started. I absolutely did not want to be on video, on camera. And I was like, oh, podcasts are audio only. I could do that.
Hmm. Yeah. So it is
So no,
doable.
you do not have to be an extrovert.
You don't. You don't. It's doable. Yeah, as we're wrapping up, I wanted to ask, your offerings, what you offer, and how people can continue to follow your journey, follow your channel, follow the podcast, anything like that.
Um, the podcast is
Mhm.
just wrapped up season 4, so I guess technically we're on hiatus, but it's on the major pod catchers. It's also on my YouTube channel. Um, that's the easiest place to kind of see what I'm doing. Uh, Instagram, Piggy Girl Travels. I don't expect like a artfully curated Instagram because I am not that girl and I am not about that life.
Mm-hmm.
You will get a little bit of my sewing, you'll get a little bit of my travel, you'll get a little bit of business stuff. Because I can't do that. That's
Mm-hmm.
not for me. My offerings, like I said, um, I have two group programs. Get
Mm-hmm.
Started Investing Challenge, that is specifically for Black women, but there will be an alternative available if you don't fit that category. And shortly, the Financial Confidence Academy will be back. And this is a group program. It is open to, I forget. It's it's not just Black women, but it's if you've heard this conversation tonight and you're thinking about, I don't know about investing, I don't know about budgeting, I don't know about savings, I got these credit cards I don't know what to do with, the Financial Confidence Academy is a 4-week program to teach you those things that you didn't learn in school so
Mm-hmm.
that you can make confident financial decisions and be a confident consumer of financial services. And then, of course, I do one on one coaching. Um, Ask Adalia. sessions. Those are very short, 1 hour. And then I do extended like 6 months. I've had clients before where they needed a little bit more than, I see your videos about moving abroad. Like, I need somebody to hold me accountable. And so I call that ease, expat accountability, and support for exiting.
I love
That's a
that.
lot of words, but the idea is you need somebody to hold you accountable, talk you through, help you work through your move abroad for
Right.
6 months. I do that, and then I do some one-on-one financial mentoring and coaching for 6 months.
Mm,
So that's all of that is available on the website, pickygirltravelstheworld.com.
got it. Got it. Link in the chat. And yeah, you also offer creative co-working sessions too,
Oh
which
yes, I forgot about that. I forgot about that. Yes, because it's
yeah,
not all about money.
right.
There is space for joy and ease, and creative co-working is typically on Sundays, where we get together and we work on things that bring us joy, whatever that is. For me, that's sewing, that might be coloring, that might be drawing, that might be crocheting,
Hmm.
watercolors, whatever that is.
Yes, I love that. And having been a part of them, so relaxing. It's like a lot of us
Yes,
are introverts in there as well too. Right? So there's no
very
pressure to
true.
interact, talk. It's like I can have my camera off, write,
And
paint, like you
it's
said.
not
Yeah.
about how productive you are,
Mm,
because I know a lot of co-working is like, okay, we're going to work for this amount of time, this sort of thing. No, this is just, um, I needed to force myself to carve out that time.
right.
And so this was a way to kind of be held accountable that, yes, I take this hour and a half every Sunday, and what I'm doing in that time period is just something I enjoy,
Yeah.
nothing else.
Just that. Simple as that. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on. Let me ask you questions. The information you share is always so valuable. And yeah, so I want to thank you again. Thank you for being here. I
Thank
truly
you for
appreciate it.
having me. Thank you for
Absolutely.
having me.
Absolutely. And thank y'all so much in the chat for all the love you've shown, all the energy you've given. Appreciate it. Yeah. Until next time, y'all. See you later. Make sure to subscribe to Adalia's channel. All right. Bye, y'all.